So what do you do when you've bought new books and you've run out of room and you've got to do something about it? Well, you buy a new bookshelf, and then what do? You reorganize all your books, and then what do? You have to show them off. What's up, guys? Welcome back to Unlimited Reads. My name is Chris, and today I'm excited to share with you an updated bookshelf tour. It's been almost 12 months since I did my last one, and since then I've been a little bit out of control. I've bought a lot of books this year and I actually ran out of room, and as you can see behind me, things are looking pretty full now because I have, if you look to the left, I have added a bookshelf last weekend and started the monumental task of reorganizing everything, revamping it, creating some more space for expansion, and yeah, it was a massive job, but certainly glad I've done it, and I'm glad to be showing it to you today. So let's take a look, shall we? Alright, so let's get this tour started. This is my office door with my Captain America decor, and we'll just mosey on in and do a very quick sweep around the room, just a quick view of the shelves there, and we'll start with showing you my cozy couch that is really nice to read in, although I don't sit in it as often as I should to read books, but must do that in the future. This is just a generic bookshelf where I've got some Goosebumps there, some other odd books, old paperbacks, and a little bit of non-fiction there. And if you see as you go down, we've got some Stephen King reference books there as well, which are really good. And I'm giving you a closer look at my desk where I make all my videos. It's a pretty spacious desk, and I've got one of the best views ever. We live near a highway and I've got a good view out the window there. You don't open up the front door and see neighbours across the road. There's also a park and playground across there as well, so it is a really nice area to live in. You can't beat it. And that's the camera I use, the Razor ring light camera, which is very good for what I need it for. And I've got a decent sized desk here, some books here that I plan on reading very shortly, the Kurosagi Corpse Delivery Service, The Power of One, and a Stephen King book, It, and Robert McCammon. And this is my antique chess set that I brought just this year. I love having it out on display, but I really need to get back into playing chess again and just learning the game properly, but it's always nice to have that out. Alright, and having another look at the shelves there, just a quick panning view. Alright, and we come to the first shelf here, which wasn't here last weekend, so I built that one, and we've got some hardbacks up the top, just extra titles there that I felt I could put them up the top and lay them horizontally to give more room to put more books on. So this section you can see here is my horror section. First of all, I do have He-Man and Skeletor there, which I've wanted those figures for a while now and managed to purchase them this year. They're not the vintage ones, but their limbs and hands have a full range of movement. But you can see here we've got some Varney the Vampire. We've got some Richard Lehman books as well, which are great. And on this shelf we have the 1990s Hotter headline editions of Dean Koontz paperbacks. They're the really good ones that have the colour foil lettering on the spines and on the front covers as well. And then some more recent releases in the trade paperback size. Couple of smaller Dean Koontz ones there, and some later release Dean Koontz books. And on the end you can see a hardback there. That's the Dean Koontz autobiography. It's the proper one, which gives a really good insight into his life. It's a great read. And then we get into the Stephen King collection, starting off with older paperbacks there that you can see, and a couple of the B format ones there at the end. And then we get into the B format Stephen King's here, a couple more hardbacks on the top. But we've got some titles there, including the entire Dark Tower series, which is brilliant. Under the Dome, The Talisman, and The Black House, and then the Halloween Stephen King editions, which I got a couple of years ago, and the cover art is sensational on those. And then we have smaller hardbacks. I've got Pennywise and Jack Torrance there on the shelf, and we've got some more C format or trade paperbacks of Stephen King right up to Fairy Tale that got released this year, and then a couple of vintage paperbacks. And I have to admit, I am embarrassed to say that I haven't read Hearts in Atlantis yet. I will be reading that next year, but yeah, I need to do that. And a few more hardbacks here before we get into the science fiction section, which we have Contact by Carl Sagan, Blake Crouch. We have the Expanse series by James S.A. Corey. We have some Star Wars EU books there, and we have Dune on the end. Now, funny thing about Dune is when I recently read The Godfather, I was in the bookstore and I had The Godfather in one hand and Dune in the other, and decided to go with The Godfather, but it was a tight decision, and Dune is definitely going to be read next year as a bucket list book. We've got some hard science fiction with Peter F. Hamilton there, which they're beasts of books. They're massive, and hopefully I'll get to those one day. And then we go into the fantasy section. We've got The Invention of Hugo Cabre, which I read this year, which was great. We've got some Brent Weeks, Jenny Wirtz, and the first Shannara trilogy by Terry Brooks, and we've got the Dragonbone Chair and Stone of Farewell, and excuse my finger in the way there. And moving up, we have some Hardy Boys hardbacks there. They're the Collins editions. They're really hard to get. They're very, very expensive to collect. So I'm glad to say I've got a few of them, but if I want to collect them all, it's going to be a costly exercise down the track. So there you go. We've also got some Funko Pops up the top. And we get into Stephen Erickson's Book of the Fallen, Malazan saga, and there are 10 books in the series. I got up to book 5, which was Midnight Tides, and I decided to take a break from the series at that point. I just couldn't get into Midnight Tides for whatever reason, but I'm always going to get back into the Malazan books. We have some Raymond Feist there, the Magician trilogy. A Darkness at Sethenon is the 3rd book, which I need to read. I haven't read that yet, and I've got a really nice bind-up of Lord of the Rings. Some Warhammer books, the Realmgate Wars and the Rise of Nagash. And of course I've got the entire set of Wheel of Time. Now these are mostly the older editions. The first 3 there are part of the new editions, which I'm gradually upgrading as I go along, so eventually I will have a brand new set of those. And we have the Demon Cycle by Peter V. Brett. I still need to read book number 5, The Core. I've also got A Game of Thrones, of course. I've got a lovely set, and I need to start that at some point. We have the Farseer trilogy and Malice by John Gwynne, which is The Faithful and the Fallen, book 1. A couple of other paperbacks here, including the Dragonlance Chronicles bind-up, which is a sensational edition. I've got some Cosmere. I have some Jim Butcher here as well. Need to read a bit more of Dresden Files, and of course I've got the Harry Potter series. And just this year I've started collecting the Skullduggery Pleasant books. I've read the first one. There are 15 in the series, and I've got the first 9 of them, and you'll see below, on purpose, I've left some space because the fantasy section and the classic section are definitely 2 sections I want to expand upon. And yeah, got a little bit of breathing room there now, so I can buy more books. And then we get into the classics. Now I've got Taking Pride of Place, The Count of Monte Cristo. It's a beautiful Barnes & Noble leather-bound edition that I got this year as well. I'm doing a buddy read on that book with my pal Scott Bryant from the Bookish Brides, and Nathan from the Rambling Reviewer is also going to be joining in, and this particular version is the Penguin Black Classic, which we've all decided to read. It's meant to be the best translation of the book, and at 1400 odd pages it's a monster, and if I complete that, it'll be the longest book I've ever read, and it'll be good to get that out of the way in January to tick that bucket list book off. So there you go, really looking forward to that one. And I've got some classics on this shelf. So I've got The Great Gatsby, The Picture of Dorian Gray, a few Penguin modern classics, and of course I've got The Odyssey, which frightens me. It's a very, very scary book. I was supposed to read it this year, but it intimidates me, to be honest, but I will get to it. And we've got a little bit of Shakespeare if I feel like reading a play at some stage, and The Power of One by Bryce Courtney, which is a book I'm going to read next year as continuing to get out of my comfort zone and read classic fiction, so that will be good. And I've got a little tiny historical fiction section here started with James Clavell's Asian Saga books, Ken Follett Pillars of the Earth, and of course Lonesome Dove by Larry McMurtry, which I read this year, and it was absolutely fantastic. It changed my life. Okay, so as we go up, we've got Clive Cussler, the Dirk Pitt series, which I've been a Dirk Pitt fan since I was 15, and I remember my first book was Cyclops, which I couldn't put down, and got addicted ever since. Also have the Tom Clancy Jack Ryan series and the Jack Ryan Jr. series. I've got every book in those series, including the really nice editions of the paperbacks here. And then we move up to the trade paperbacks, where the last three on the right there, you can see the cover art was really, really good, and it continued for the next 5 books in the series until I purchased 0 Hour by Tom Clancy, and it's written in bold orange and does not match the others. I was gutted about that. I wanted them to match, but what can you do? And I've got some Nelson DeMille and Robert Ludlum's Bourne trilogy. And then we get into the Lee Child Jack Reacher series, which I have most of those. I am going to be talking about Lee Child and Jack Reacher on the channel very, very shortly, so I'm cooking something up which will be really, really good, and looking forward to that. And we also have some Linda LaPlante, and we have John Connolly, Greg Iles, a very underrated American author who writes really good stuff, and Australian author Chris Hammer. And then we have a whole shelf devoted to Peter James, which he writes the Roy Grace series, who is a British detective who solves heinous crimes. I've read about 10 of the books, but I do believe I have about 5 or 6 to go, which I can't wait for that. And my favourite Australian author, Matthew Riley, all the hardbacks of his books there, including the smaller black hardbacks that are really, really rare now, and I'm glad I own a few of those. And here we get into a very large James Patterson section, so we're starting off with the Detective Michael Bennett series here, and as we move along we move into the Private series with the main character Jack Morgan. Fantastic series as well. So there are a few books in the series up to Private Rogue on the right there, but at the end of this year there is another private book coming out called Private Beijing, which I'm keen to get my hands on. And right next door we have the Alex Cross series. Now I've got the whole set apart from about 3 or 4 books that I'm missing, and I hope to fill in those gaps very soon. We have NYPD Red 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6, and a couple of series there as well. And then we get into a lot of the standalone books here that you can see. And continues for a little bit up the top before we get into Chris Carter. He is a fantastic author. He is just unbelievable. When Genesis came out, I was chopping at the bit to read that, and I just love it. He is so good. We have Mike Grist, a new author I've discovered. I've got to get around to reading those 3 books. We have Jack Carr, Michael Ledwidge, James Deegan, Ken Follett, Never. That was a shocking book in the end. And Mark Dawson, who I really like to read as well. And we've got R.J. Ellery, another very underrated American author who writes really good mysteries. I've got a few of his books, but certainly need to get my hands on a few more. And of course we've got The Godfather and the T.M. Logan books. He is a fantastic psychological thriller writer. He is going to be bringing out a new book in March called The Mother, and between now and then I'm going to petition him to come on the channel as well for a chat, so we'll see how that goes. I've already got Michael Robertson Jr. coming on, so I'd like to invite more authors on. And then we have some Jeffrey Deaver, Harlan Coben, some authors there that have not series, but you know, they've written a fair few books each. And Wolf of Wall Street, can't wait to get into that one. And then we have the Heather Morris trilogy, The Tattooist of Auschwitz, Chica's Journey, and Three Sisters. Then some standalone thrillers. Ellie Reynolds is great, and we've got a few good ones there. Stephen Chbosky, The Imaginary Friend, is a freakish read. I recommend you read that one. Have some Karen Rose crime books here, as well as Anne Cleves and Alex Carver, and a few more crime titles up the top on the next shelf there, including The Bone Collector. And I've got some older paperbacks here that I just chuck them in there just to have them in a spot, and those 3 books on the end are potential giveaways there. And I've got some James A. Michener, and this shelf is where I'm going to keep my manga, which I've started to read. The Kurosagi Corpse Delivery Service is absolutely fantastic. I'm loving that. And those are the books I've got to read on my TBR. And down below I've got some Jonathan Kellerman Alex Delaware series. Now these are over here out of the way because the covers don't really match, especially with the books on the lower shelves. It frustrates me. They're all different. I think the publishers should have just kept them all the same, but what can you do? But there you go, guys. That is it for my book tour. I hope you liked it. And yeah, I have to say my library office space is looking really good at the moment. And I have to say the IKEA bookshelves that I use are very, very cheap, very, very easy to build, and very good value for money. So there you go. Thanks for watching. So there you go, guys. That is it for another bookshelf tour. I'll probably do another one in the next year or two, but I've certainly got enough books. I think at last count I had about 700, and since then I've probably brought another 300, so the collection itself is probably sitting at about 1,000, but there are a lot more books to buy in the future. There's no stopping that. And yeah, hope you liked it. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. And before I go, just a quick message to all my friends in the US and all my subscribers in the US who are celebrating in the last couple of days. Hope you all had a really good Thanksgiving. And yeah, until next time, guys, see you later.